Okay, I'm going to go ahead and officially get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Today is our group learning program, and on Sundays I share a chapter from volume 1 of our book series, and each Sunday I go chapter by chapter. Today we're in chapter 16, which is titled Dissolving the Ego. Ego serves no purpose. This is where you're going to understand what the ego is, the difficulties that it's causing in one's life by having an ego, and then I'm going to teach you how to actually dissolve the ego and eliminate it through certain techniques and practices that you can employ. We start our class with a meditation, and if you would like to join for meditation, you're welcome to. So I'd like to welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple, and those of you guys that are joining us online, welcome to everyone. If you'd like to join for meditation, you might decide to make yourself comfortable either in a chair or on the floor. This is where people will typically learn. There's 4 positions to do meditation, which are seated, lying, standing, and walking position. But typically seated position is where a lot of people are learning. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And if you're in a chair, you might just have your feet flat on the floor or cross at the ankles. It's really up to you. You would like the lower body to be comfortable. It's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way, so find what's comfortable for you. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. So if this is comfortable for you, you might decide to use this, but there's other options as well, because again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. It's about finding what's comfortable for you. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees or their palms up. You might even just rest them comfortably in your lap. It's really up to you. The lower body and hands and arms should be comfortable. Not luxurious and not painful, but in the middle where it's comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid, the mind could have a tendency to be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect so that the mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation, so you can do the work of the actual meditation itself. I'm going to be easing into meditation with some chanting, and if you'd like to join, you're welcome to. I have the chants on a laminated sheet over there on the table. There's multiple copies, so you guys can use them if you like. I chant in the Pali language. This is the language that the original teachings of the Buddha are captured in, and you'll see the English translations on there as well, so that you can see what we're actually chanting. These chants, it's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not even prayer or anything like that. Though during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory and then to be able to practice them in their life. So when the Buddha would teach, he would teach orally. Nothing was written down. And then they would use chanting. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and chant his teachings, reciting them orally, word for word for word for word. So there's no mystical or magical thing with chanting or anything like that. So I do this chanting in order to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And you guys are welcome to join along with that. And there's even courses and various programs that I teach where I help students learn how to chant these particular chants. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to be starting a course where I'm going to teach students how to do these chants, among other things, throughout the entire 5-day course. So after the chanting, I'll provide some guidance while we're in meditation to help you guys understand how to do the meditation. And then there'll be a period of time where I'll just be quiet and we'll just all be meditating here at the temple. And those of you guys that are joining us online will just be meditating together. You'll hear an occasional car maybe, or a dog barking, or maybe a bird chirping or something like this. But as you hear these things, all these sounds are impermanent. You can just train the mind to let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. You'll hear me during the guidance section explaining how to do that. So during that period of time where we're just meditating together, I won't be talking. It'll just be you doing the work of meditating. Then I will come out of the meditation with some chanting, and then I'll move into sharing some teachings with you guys to help you on this path to enlightenment. So if you'd like to join, if you need meditation cushions or the chanting sheet, feel free to get anything that you need for meditation. I'll just start with chanting, and then we'll go from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apiwateyami วากขาโตมหาเควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตวัปมนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and the hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Bhagavannang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusranam Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple and those of you guys that are online. Welcome to all of you guys, including those of you that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to you guys. Today, as I mentioned, is our topic of dissolving the ego. Ego serves no purpose. This is chapter 16 of volume 1. I'm going to be sharing with you guys teachings to be able to help you understand what the ego is, how it causes complications in one's life, and then I'm going to teach you how to dissolve it and eliminate it. And this is a practice that you're going to need to employ over a consistent long-term period in order to dissolve the ego. But as you do, you're going to notice more and more benefits, because you're going to notice that your personal and professional relationships will really improve, because you're going to hear me talk about how the ego causes you to be arrogant and put yourself above people or put yourself below people. And in this way, you're not able to live harmoniously with all beings. So by dissolving the ego, you're going to see more peace and joy come into the mind. And you're going to notice that your personal and professional relationships will really improve when you're functioning in a humble way without the ego. Because remember, this enlightened mental state that the Buddha taught, it's about getting to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings in others are completely eliminated from the mind. And you do that through training the mind. You don't believe a bunch of things and then hope something good happens when you die. The Buddha didn't teach rules or commandments that you need to follow. He wasn't trying to force you or convince you to do anything. He shared teachings with you that are going to help you to purify the mind of these pollutions that he discovered. There's 10 individual pollutions that he discovered. They're referred to as the 10 fetters, and some people refer to them as taints or pollutions or defilements. We're going to be talking about two of these today, two major ones that are involved in what we refer to as the ego. So as we go in today's class, I would like to let you know that you're welcome to ask any and all questions. We have microphones here in this white bowl. If you would like to ask a question, if you wouldn't mind just picking that up, there's a little gray switch on it that'll turn on a light. And then when you speak, the people online will be able to hear you. And for those of you guys that are online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. And in Zoom, you can even raise your hand electronically and we'll hear you here at the temple. For those of you guys that are here at the temple for the first time, there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use that at any point. We even have water here that is provided by our students that you're welcome to enjoy. There's even a few snacks over there. I taught a children's retreat on Thursday and Friday, and they left behind some snacks because they were sharing snacks with each other. So if you'd like some chocolate or some cookies or popcorn or anything like that, feel free to help yourself to that over there. So let me do some switching over here online so that the folks can see our visual aids here at the temple. And then I'll just start sharing here with you some teachings to be able to help you. So first, let's just talk about what the ego is. What the ego is it's a collection of these past and future experiences that you might have in your mind. It's your perceptions, your thoughts, your ideas about your self-image and about your self-identity, how you view this self-image and how you view the self-identity in the mind. It also involves this arrogance, pride, judgment, measuring and comparing yourself as being superior and also inferior as well. Sometimes when people think about the ego, they think about this arrogance where you're putting yourself above people and looking down on people. And yes, that is part of the ego, but also the ego, because it does that, in other situations, it will put yourself below people, and then you'll look up to them in such awe and admiration. You might even be uncalm and shaken up when you're around these individuals. So we're using this word ego to describe this, where the mind is holding on, it's clinging to certain cravings that it wants. It wants to be arrogant and prideful. It judges other people, looking at other people, trying to determine what is wholesome or unwholesome for them. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have this word ego available to them. This is kind of a newer word in the last few hundred years that we've created in order to describe what the Buddha was describing. He was describing what we refer to as the ego as two separate pollutions in the mind. And it's actually helpful to understand it in these two separate pollutions, because this combination of the ego, it's helpful to understand it in that way. But by splitting it out and understanding it in the way that the Buddha taught, you can see that there's unique symptoms that are being experienced because of these two individual pollutions. So while we combined it as the ego, I'm going to explain it to you first as two separate pollutions, and then we'll talk about it generally as the ego. So the first pollution that makes up the ego is called personal existence view. This is the first of the 10 fetters. We call them the fetters because it's like a shackle around your ankle with a chain and a ball. That's what a fetter is, and it keeps a prisoner trapped. So during ancient times, when they were looking to keep prisoners in a certain area, they would put a shackle, a chain, and a big heavy ball around their ankle, and this would keep them confined to a certain area. So the Buddha referred to these as fetters. There's 10 individual fetters or pollutions in the mind, and it's when you uproot these 10 pollutions that you experience the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy that is the enlightened mind. So understanding each one of these fetters, what they are, the symptoms that are involved when you have these fetters in your mind, and then how to uproot them is part of this path to enlightenment. So this first one, called personal existence view, I introduced this to students back at the beginning of the group learning program, but now is an opportunity for us to go deeper into it so that you can understand it in more depth. And if this is your first time here, that's okay, because I'm going to teach this as if you haven't learned this at all. What this personal existence view is this is where the mind has the misunderstanding or the confusion or the false belief or the misperception that this body or this mind is you. So the mind is clinging to a certain self-image, thinking that this is who you are. And now, if you're perceived in the world the way that you want to be perceived, you will be happy or excited, or you'll be pleased with that. But then when you experience disagreeable contact, then you'll experience these painful feelings like sadness, anger, and frustration. So for example, say you spill something on your clothing like spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream. If you're in a social situation, you might feel embarrassed. This is because the mind's not being perceived in the way that it wants to be perceived among others. So you feel this embarrassment. This is discontentedness that arises. Or say you've ever looked in the mirror and you see a wrinkle, or you see a pimple, or you see a mole. You're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, and your mind might have been shaken up in that situation. Or if you see a gray hair, or you see like you're thinning out on your hair, or maybe you're getting a little bit of extra fat here and there, the mind might have been shaken up during that period of time because your mind is clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. Or you might have heard somebody say something agreeable to you about how you look and how you appear. Someone might have said, "Oh, you look so beautiful," or "You look so handsome," or "The color of that shirt really brings out the color of your eyes. Oh, you look so beautiful. You look so handsome." If you heard this, you might have gotten pleasant feelings based on the condition of hearing this agreeable speech. You might have got happy or excited that somebody has said this to you. But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading or disparaging. Because of impermanence, people are going to say different things. Not everyone in the world is polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. So you're going to sometimes hear people that say something degrading or disparaging, and you can't control what other people say and whatever other people do. So all you can do is control your own mind through training your mind. So if you allow your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings like happiness or excitement when somebody says something agreeable to you about your self-image, then when somebody says something disagreeable, then you're going to get those painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So this is the first part of personal existence view, that the mind is clinging to this body, thinking that this is you, wanting it to be permanent. And then when things start changing, like you get ice cream or spaghetti sauce, or you get a mole or a pimple or gray hair or a wrinkle or extra fat or this thing or the other, you might experience these painful feelings because the mind's clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent and be perceived in the world a certain way permanently. But this is not possible because this body is constantly changing. This is the self-image part of personal existence view. The self-identity part is where the mind is clinging to certain identity in the mind. Your culture, your nationality, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, maybe your job or your occupation, and you're seeing this as who you are as a person. This is your identity. That now maybe you think that I am American, or I am a Brit, or I am an Aussie, or I am Swedish, or I am Chinese, or I am Japanese. Any of this I am. Right? Or I am a police officer, or I am a lawyer, or I am a Buddhist teacher. Any of this I am is the mind clinging to a certain identity, thinking this is who you are. And now, once again, if you hear something agreeable, someone says, all Buddhist teachers are so friendly and lovely and generous. They share their time with everybody. They help people get to enlightenment. Oh, they're so wonderful. Well, if you get pleasant feelings when you hear that, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging about what you do in the world, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, a food server, a taxi driver, whatever it is that you do, someone's going to say something degrading and disparaging. And now when you hear that, you'll experience those painful feelings. You could be at a restaurant with a friend, just minding your own business, having dinner, and 2 tables over, they could be talking about the country that you come from. They could be degrading people from wherever you come from. And if you take on that as your identity of who you are, now when they're degrading the country that you come from, you feel like they are talking about me because they're talking about Chinese people, or they're talking about Americans or Japanese people or British people or Australian people or wherever it is that you come from. You might think that they're talking about me. This is the self-identity that the mind is clinging to. Or if you've ever been into a relationship and you've assumed this role of, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife, and this is what you identify with. When you were in that relationship, maybe your mind felt quite fine. But then when you separated in that relationship and now you're single, the mind doesn't identify with I am single. The mind identifies with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And now you might want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind wasn't comfortable in this single status, that the mind wanted to be identifying with I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. So these are some of the complications that the mind experiences when it has personal existence view. In some of these examples that I'm sharing, they probably are connecting to some direct experience that you've had. Some of these examples that I'm sharing these various examples because you can hear some of the things that you've experienced through your own direct experience, that yes, you can see that your mind has this personal existence view, that you're clinging potentially to this body or to this mind, thinking that this is who you are, wanting it to be permanent. So what you need to be able to get to is the point where you eliminate this. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about here in a little bit. But first, I'd like to make sure you understand what the personal existence view is and some of the complications that you're experiencing because of personal existence view. And then I'm going to explain to you what conceit is, and then I'll open up to any questions you guys have before we move on so that I can be sure that you understand what these 2 fetters are, or these 2 pollutions. What conceit is, this is the 8th fetter out of the list of 10 fetters that the Buddha teaches. And these 2 things combined, the personal existence view and conceit, is what we refer to as the ego. What conceit is this arrogance, the pride, the judging and measuring and comparing, looking at other people and trying to decide what's wholesome for them, whether they are wholesome, whether they are unwholesome, and you're comparing them to yourself and trying to figure out, where are you in this pecking order? Are you above them or are you below them? You might be looking at certain qualities of their mind, maybe their job or occupation. You might be looking at their financial status, maybe their role in the community, or any number of things like this. You might be looking at those attributes and then judging them and trying to determine whether you are above them or below them. And then the mind can have this arrogance, this pride, thinking that you're so great or you're so wonderful, and now walking around kind of with a chip on your shoulder or your chest puffed out with kind of boastfulness and things like this. And as long as you're having this conceit in the mind and going around talking this way and interacting in the world in this way, you'll find that other people will typically reject you because of this arrogance, because of this pride, because of this judging others, putting yourself above people, looking down on them and talking down to them, but also putting yourself below people. The people will end up rejecting you. Because putting yourself above people, you'll tend to talk down to people and degrade them, but putting yourself below people, you'll be shaken up and uncalm. So if there's a certain celebrity or certain famous person that you would think, like, if I met this person, oh my God, that would be so amazing, and you would just be all shaken up being around that person, you'd be awestruck. Well, in this situation, your mind is shaken up. Well, the same thing can occur, like say you have a boss or something like this, and now you look up to that boss with such awe, and now when you go into their office, your mind is all shaken up, you're uncalm, you're not able to communicate effectively and share certain intelligent thoughts that you have, and now what you'll find is you'll struggle in your professional career because you can't apply your wisdom and your intellectual knowledge to a particular project without your coworkers or your boss or other people around you seeing that your mind is all shaken up and you're unsteady and uncalm. So if you allow this conceit to reside in the mind, not only are you going to talk down to people potentially, but you also put yourself below people and be shaken up and find that you'll lose out on certain professional options where you can have these opportunities to advance your career. So getting rid of the conceit is very important so that you can maintain your calmness and composure. Where this conceit is coming from is in our previous existences, that prior to this human existence, we've all had countless existences. This is something that you can independently verify through the cycle of rebirth and verifying this. When we were in the animal realm, we needed to have conceit because when we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female because they're the ones who are teaching us how to hunt, they're breeding, they're teaching us how to be wolves. We needed to know who's the matriarch of our elephant herd because she's going to show us where the food is, she's going to show us where the watering holes are, and she's going to show us the migration paths. So knowing who the matriarch of our herd is was detrimental to our survival. So we needed to have this pecking order in our herd or our pack of wolves. But when we move into the human realm, we maintain this conditioning from our animal existences. So now in the human realm, the human mind is trying to figure out this pecking order and trying to figure out who's above you and who's below you. But you don't need this in the human realm. It just causes people to reject you or for you to lose out on opportunities in a professional environment or in a personal environment. So by eliminating conceit, you can reside harmoniously with all beings. You don't need to try to figure out who's above you or who's below you. If you have this judgment in your mind where you're judging other people, trying to put yourself above people and below people, now when you're in mixed company, your mind can be almost obsessively trying to figure out who's above me and who's below me. And you find it very challenging to talk in social settings because you might have some people who you consider to be above you and some people who you consider to be below you. And now you can't figure out how to talk to one group of people versus another. Also, if you're judging other people and either putting yourself above them or below them, you're probably judging yourself as well. You might have this negative self-talk in your mind where you're degrading yourself because you look at other people potentially in judgmental ways and you're judging them. And now you might direct that same quality of mind towards yourself and look down on yourself, or look up to yourself and think that you're so great or so wonderful. And as long as your mind is doing this, you'll find that it's going to hinder you from experiencing the peace and joy of the enlightened mind and also having very harmonious relationships with others. So it's only through dissolving this conceit that the mind can then reside peaceful and joyful with all beings around you. So it's this personal existence view and this conceit that is what we're calling the ego. But they're two individual fetters, they're two individual pollutions, and you can see that they produce different symptoms in the mind. So just like they produce different symptoms in the mind, there's different remedies to actually eliminate these. But we refer to these as the ego. So let me pause here and see what questions you guys might have, because I'd like to be sure you understand these in detail. You can ask any and all questions that you like. Either here at the temple, you can use the microphones here by just turning on the switch. You can pass them around and ask questions. Or if you're online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. Do you guys have any questions here? No questions? Okay, let's just check online here. See what we got. So Jimmy, you're asking some questions here on Facebook. Jimmy's asking, sorry, I missed most of this. Do you know any good practices to dissolve the ego? That's what we're about to talk about, Jimmy. So stick around and you'll be able to learn some more here. Okay, so I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move on and helping you guys to further understand this. Oh, you have a question? Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand. Yeah, feel free. We have 2 mics. You guys can pass them around as you guys have questions and even keep them with you if you need to. And if the batteries aren't working, you can change the batteries there. There's some new batteries.
Is this, yeah.
Yep, you got it.
She's working. Just around the conceit concept and around like survival mode and the animalistic, I feel like, you know, when we're young, we get taught that we need to fit in to be accepted. So for example, like you end up pleasing your parents and doing what they need so that you get fed and sheltered and etc. So I feel like it doesn't just start from when we were perhaps in the animal realm, but it also comes into when we're really small and like we need to perhaps please our parents to fit in. So I feel like that's kind of where the ego comes in, as well as like we learn, and perhaps in school, like, you know, you wear a pink dress because you know that you're going to be liked and accepted, so you're not getting bullied. So I feel like it really comes from that like survival mode. So I don't really know what my question is, but
So what you're describing is it gets reinforced in the human existence, that the mind's already conditioned this way in the animal realm. So then when you're born into the human realm, this all gets reinforced. Your parents, your caregivers, your friends, oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful, look at you, oh, good job, oh, you're amazing, you're so amazing. And now this ego, which we're calling, or we're talking specifically about conceit, it gets reinforced and bolstered and expands in the mind. And what you ultimately need to do is be able to identify this. And then as you're seeing the symptoms, you're going to hear things that you can do both proactively. I'm going to teach you some proactive things that you can use to dissolve the ego. And then I'm going to teach you things to do in the moment while you're actually experiencing the arising of the ego. Mm-hmm. Any other questions you guys have? Okay, so let's move on to the next part, which is now I'm going to talk to you about the ego, right? So now that we understand what personal existence view and conceit is, I'm going to now combine it and talk to this about the ego. When I talk about the symptoms, I'm going to break it out again, but here I'm just going to refer to what we just discussed as personal existence view and conceit. I'm going to refer to it as the ego, because the ego stands in the way of you being able to see true reality. All these pollutions, not only personal existence view and conceit, but all these pollutions of the mind, it's almost like a dirty window, that your mind has certain pollutions in the mind, and now as you look out at the world, you're looking out at the world through this dirty window, and now it makes it very challenging for you to be able to see true reality of what's truly happening in the world around you. And now you're going to start forming certain perceptions about the people around you and the situations around you through these pollutions of mind, because you're looking out at the world through this dirty window. And ultimately what we're going to get to in today's class related to these two fetters is how to clean off this dirty window, how to clean out this dirty window so that you can look out at the world and see true reality. But as long as you have these pollutions of personal existence view and conceit, you're going to notice these types of things occurring, that the ego is going to project unwholesome qualities that are in your own mind onto others. And then you're going to read that reflection that's coming back to you as coming from the other person, when in reality, it's coming from your own mind. So let me give you an example of this. Let's just say you're in a business meeting and there's a bunch of people in the business meeting and you guys are all there talking. And then maybe 5 minutes into the meeting, somebody walks in, and this person walks in and they have on a really nice suit or clothes. Maybe they have some nice jewelry on. Maybe they've done their hair in a certain way. Maybe there's even a certain aroma from their perfume or cologne that kind of comes into the room with them. And you look at them perhaps with this ego, judging them and say, look at them trying to look so beautiful, trying to look so handsome. Look at them trying to show off in front of everybody. Well, that's the mind's ego projecting onto the other person, and now reading that as coming from them, when in reality it's your own mind that wants to be perceived this way. You're the one who potentially is interested in being perceived as beautiful or handsome. Only thing that's actually happened, true reality, is a human being has just walked into the room. That's the only thing that has occurred. Sure, this person has on certain clothes, certain jewelry, certain hair, certain perfume, but that's the choices that they made when they woke up in the morning, and that's what they're choosing to go through the world with. That doesn't mean they're trying to project a certain image to be beautiful or handsome in front of everyone. It's not that they're trying to show off necessarily. That's the perception that the mind is now forming based on its own ego. So the mind's own ego, this conceit and this personal existence view, is being casted onto this other person, and now the mind mind is reading that as coming from the other person, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. So there's certain unwholesome qualities that are in the ego that now the mind is going to project that onto others and now read it as coming from them. And this is going to hinder you from being able to have open and wonderful relationships with everyone. Because say this person comes in and sits down in the business meeting and they start talking and start sharing ideas, you could potentially be bitter and harsh and hostile to them because of your arrogance, because of your conceit, because of your misperceptions that you're having in the mind that you're clinging to. Now you're being bitter and harsh and degrading or having animosity towards this person. And now that's affecting you because that's coming from your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now the other people in the room see you being bitter and harsh and hostile towards this person when the only thing that's happened is a human being has walked into the room, chose to sit down and start sharing some ideas. So your ego is going to hinder you from being able to see true reality of what's actually really happening. Let's be sure that you understand this word judgment, because different people might think about this word in different ways. The way that I'm using the word judgment is that the mind is attempting to determine what is right or wrong for another person while placing yourself above them with arrogance or pride. And the mind also can put itself below people with judgment. The mind is comparing oneself as being superior or inferior to another, attempting to declare who is wholesome or unwholesome, or bad or good. The judgment is based in conceit, and it's a harmful aspect of the mind that needs to be eliminated in order to get to enlightenment. This is what judgment is, putting yourself above or below people. There's something else called discernment. What discernment is, this is wise decision making. This is what you actually need to cultivate in order to get to enlightenment, among other qualities of mind. So when we talk about judgment, we're not talking about decision making. That's discernment. What judgment is casting certain qualities onto people, trying to determine whether they're above you or below you. This is coming from the conceit. So this is what you would like to get rid of. And as long as your mind is having this judgment towards others, it's going to hinder you from being able to see them as they are and love them as they are. This was the topic last week. I taught true love, love without attachment. So if you're going to practice true love, you're going to need to eliminate the ego, because as long as you're viewing people as either above you or below you, you're casting certain unwholesome qualities onto them and reading it as coming from them when reality is coming from you. You're not going to be able to see them as they are and just love them as they are without any expectations or wanting anything from that person specifically. Then I would like to be sure you understand what a perception is. What a perception is like a belief or opinion or a view of how things seem to be. They may or may not be true. And as long as you're forming perceptions in your mind and then you're clinging to those things, once again, this is going to hinder you from having harmonious relationships with all people, because you'll look out at the world, you'll form a certain perception based on pollutions that are in the mind, and then you might cling to that perception, and now you might have this dislike towards this particular person, or you might be angry at this particular person. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible for you to have anger or sadness or those other discontent feelings that I talk about, but it'll also be physically impossible for you to dislike somebody. When you dislike somebody, this is coming from your own mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's not possible for you to dislike anybody. You will love all beings. You will have compassion for all beings. And that's something that you need to train your mind to be able to do. And understanding this ego and understanding the perceptions that the mind forms about other people, and training your mind to let those go and not forming those perceptions based in your own judgment, based in your own conceit, that's part of being able to get to the point where you can love all beings and not even have a dislike towards others. So as you develop your perceptions, this is coming through your own ego. Not only does the ego project unwholesome qualities onto others and then read that as coming from them, but certain wholesome qualities that you have in your mind, there's certain wholesome things that you currently practice right now, that you might project those onto other people, wanting other people to do those same things. So say that you consider yourself to be fairly polite or kind or friendly or respectful, and you see that because the ego's in there trying to tell you how great great you are and how wonderful you are. And now you project that onto other people. When you see other people aren't doing what you're doing, you're like, look at them. They're not even, being polite or kind or friendly. So not only are you maybe projecting unwholesome qualities onto others and then trying to judge them and consider them below you, but there's certain wholesome qualities that you have in your mind that you're wanting other people to practice. And now you're projecting that onto them and potentially wanting them to do the same things as you. And that's part of your cravings, part of your desires, not understanding impermanence, that everybody is on their own journey. Where you are in your journey is going to be a different place than where other people are in their journey. So let's say, for example, that you've chosen to eat vegan food, and that's what you think is a good idea, and that's something that you would like to do in order to ensure that the health of the body is improved, ensure that you're not causing harm to animals. This can be a wise decision potentially. But if you're doing that, and then because of that wholesome quality, you're projecting that onto others, and you think negatively of people who choose to eat meat, then now your mind is judging that person based on your own wholesome qualities, and now wanting and craving and longing and yearning for other people to do the same thing as you. And now this will again hinder you from having harmonious relationships with all people, not realizing the universal truth of impermanence, that everybody's in a different place in their journey to enlightenment. And just because you've improved maybe what you eat, maybe somebody else hasn't, but maybe you do other things that person isn't doing, right? So it's not helpful. It's not wise to measure and compare yourself to anybody amongst your community that you're part of, but even outside your community. Just understand that you're on your own independent journey, and whatever you're choosing to do, that's the choices that you're making. And you don't need to compare yourself to what other people are choosing to do or what they're not doing. It's not about trying to figure out who's more enlightened than you or who's less enlightened than you. It's about your own independent journey and not trying to determine what's wholesome or unwholesome for other people. That's the decision for that person to make. And everybody's at a different point in their journey and is going to choose to cultivate certain wholesome qualities at different times in their life, and they're going to choose to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities at different times in their life. And that's based on that individual's decisions. And not everyone's going to be at the same place as you. And the mind needs to learn to be more humble. So what we're getting to is helping you to understand that the ego serves no purpose. Sometimes people think that you can't live without an ego, or you can't exist in the world without an ego. But this is actually not true. The ego is only causing complications. It's only causing difficulties in one's mind. You can go into the workforce, you can go into your career, you can do anything that you would like to do in the world without an ego. In fact, the less ego you have, the more successful you'll be in all these different settings, whether it's personal or professional. So now I'm going to share with you guys how to eliminate these two fetters, personal existence view and the conceit. Earlier in this program, we talked about the universal truth of non-self. And I talk about this at different times in the various courses and retreats that I teach. I'm going to be talking about this on Tuesday this week in our 5-day course. I'm going to be talking about the universal truth of non-self, because that's the solution to that first fetter of personal existence view. The universal truth of non-self, the Buddha is explaining to you that there is no self, because with personal existence view in the mind, where the mind's clinging to this self-image and or this self-identity, the mind's thinking that this is you, that this body or this mind is you, it's who you are. But the mind can get to a point where you understand and realize non-self, realize that there is no self here, there is no you there. You're not this body, you're not this mind. There is a body, there is a mind, and they've come together for this existence. And we refer to this as a person. But this isn't you, it's not who you are as a person. So you're going to need to eliminate the clinging to this self-image and this self-identity as being who you are. Sometimes people say, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? This is just the mind continuing to grasp and continuing to long and wanting to know, what am I? If I'm not this and I'm not this, then what am I? You're nothing. There's nothing there. But the problem is that we're taught all throughout our life to go out into the world and be a somebody, go change the world. Or sometimes the country that we come from, we have national anthems, we have flags. In America, there's a pledge allegiance to the flag. There's all these things to take on this identity. Nowadays, we have certain groups and certain communities that we might join that even have their own slogan or their own motto or their own flag to take on more and more of this identity. But you need to get to a point where you strip all that away and you realize that there is a body, there is a mind, and this is what we call a person, but none of those roles or identities that your mind might be holding on to right now, none of this is you. So what I'm going to be sharing with you here are various practices that you can proactively use in order to train the mind to let go of this personal existence view. And then I'll also share with you things that you can be doing in the moment when your personal existence view arises. So here, there's a certain meditation that I taught back in chapter 11, and I realize some of you guys maybe haven't learned that with me yet. But if you get this volume 1, either by downloading it from our website or taking it and go printing it, or you order a copy from Amazon or get a printed version here, you can learn about this meditation called meditation to realize non-self. This is a specific meditation that you use in order to help you train the mind to start disassociating with this body or this mind is who you are. Being able to see more and more clearly that this body isn't you and this mind isn't you. You wouldn't be able to just go in and use this meditation by itself. You're going to need to learn the things that I have to share with you on the universal truth of non-self and this topic here of dissolving the ego. So if you're just starting out on the path, you wouldn't go out and start doing this meditation. But once you develop your breathing mindfulness meditation, your loving kindness meditation, you develop the Eightfold Path and all the connecting teachings, and you start noticing more and more improved qualities of mind, you're going to start experiencing what's referred to as the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind experiences before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 stages of enlightenment, and the mind is actually enlightened when you get to the 4th stage. But before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's these 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through. We refer to them as jhanas. If this is translated to just one English word, I would use it. What the word jhana means is meditative absorption or mental absorption, that the mind has absorbed a certain amount of meditation, has absorbed a certain amount of the teachings, and you've put those into practice and you've started to transform the mind to a certain degree. And as you start moving through these 4 jhanas, these preliminary phases, you'll notice certain improved qualities of mind that are happening. And as you start noticing that, it's like night and day from where you were off the path to enlightenment to when you were on the path to enlightenment and actually experiencing these jhanas, you'll notice this significant improvement to the condition of the mind. And these qualities of mind are there throughout your day. Some people think that you only experience the jhanas when you're in meditation, but it's not true. You actually are experiencing these qualities throughout your day. And you can see the words of the Buddha in this book series where he describes the jhanas. And there are certain classes and courses and retreats where I teach the jhanas and helping you understand what they are so that you know your mind's moving into them. And as your mind's moving into these jhanas, that would be the ideal time to start using this meditation to realize non-self, because the mind's kind of been prepped and ready and prepared to start eliminating this concept of a self and start to realize non-self. So if you just went in and used this meditation from the beginning, the mind's kind of a little bit crusty. It's kind of holding on really tightly. So it's not quite ready to let go of this personal existence view. It's when you're using breathing mindfulness meditation and all the other techniques on the Eightfold Path that kind of soften up the mind and make it ready to let go of this personal existence view that this meditation will then be effective. So I teach this in volume 1, chapter 11. I also teach it in some of the retreats that I teach. I share this. So if you're attending the retreat in January, from the 21st through the 26th, I'll be teaching it there and I'll be doing it there. We'll even spend an hour and a half talking about just personal existence view in that particular retreat. So this meditation is something that you can use to proactively work to eliminate personal existence view. Then a second thing that you can do is you can kind of change the language that you use in day-to-day life. When personal existence view is there, you might find that you're saying things like, can you hand me my phone? Or can you give me the phone, my phone? I'm going to my house or my job. I'm going to my job. This kind of language, oftentimes the mind is saying mine, 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 or my son or my daughter or my clothes. Mine, 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 mine. This is the mind clinging to these certain things that form the self-image and that form the self-identity. So if it's my car, my house, my job, mine, 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 my clothes, my phone, my computer, then the mind is clinging. But if you decide to start helping your mind to realize this non-self and eliminate personal existence view, you can start kind of shifting your language a bit and start disassociating with these things as being mine, 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 mine. You might say, can you hand me the phone? Or I'm going to the house, or I'm going to the car, things like this. So you might need to adjust your language, because the English language is kind of unfitting to truly represent true reality. If you learn Thai language, in the Thai language, we tend to speak in the third person. So like if I would say, I am hungry in English, if I say that in Thai, I would say, David is hungry. Right? So you speak in the third person, you eliminate this I am. So the Thai language has been informed by Buddhism, because Buddhism has been here for 800 to 1200 years. So as they've been speaking Thai over many, many years, they've set up their society and their culture and their language in a way that helps you to realize non-self. In fact, if you would like to change your name in Thailand, you can actually go down to the government office and change your name in about 30 minutes or an hour. You can just sign a couple documents and boom, you've changed your name. Where in most of the cultures that we come from, it's, takes many, many months. You have to hire lawyers. You have to go to court. You have to file all kinds of documentation. People probably do a criminal background check to figure out why you're trying to change your name and all these other things. Where here in Thailand, they understand that this name that we're given at birth is just a label. And now you might start having this certain identity or this certain image that you form around this name. And some people, they will go change their name as a way to disassociate with this label that was given to them at birth in order to help train the mind that I am not David. This name David was given to me at birth, but I am not David. I know that this body was born in America, but I am not American. The mind no longer identifies with that. So the way that you can help your mind to accomplish this realizing of non-self is train it to disassociate with some of these things by changing the language that you use. But then in some cases, you just kind of have to say certain language, like my son Bailan. If I was to say, this is the being that I contributed sperm to 12 years ago, people would be like, what is he talking about? Right? So you kind of have to say, this is my son Bailan. But my mind knows he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. I'm not here to control him or put my expectations on him. He needs to make his own decisions. So you can get to a point where maybe 95% of the time that you're speaking, you kind of adjust your language in order to say the phone or the house or the job or the car or things like this. But then in certain situations, it's just easier to say, this is my son Bailan. But your mind can know that he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. You're going to need to develop this perception of impermanence. You're going to see the words of the Buddha as you study with me, where he talks about developing this perception of impermanence. What he's talking about here is deeply soaking into the mind to understand that everything around you is impermanent. If your mind has craving, desire, attachment, and you're experiencing discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, there's a certain craving for permanence. The mind is craving things to be permanent. And when you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. And as long as the mind's craving this permanence, not understanding the universal truth of impermanence, then it will continue to struggle and have difficulties. And one of the things that it's craving permanence about is this body, the self-image, in this mind, this self-identity. So by deeply soaking into the mind the perception of impermanence, meaning go around the world and start to try to identify something that is permanent. When you're walking down the street, you see a crack in the sidewalk. That's impermanence. You see the color of the sidewalk changes, or the texture or the height of the sidewalk. That's impermanence. You go to the restaurant for lunch and they don't have a menu item that you've ordered. Well, of course, because that's impermanence, right? Or, you're thinking that mom is going to call you today and then she doesn't call for 3 days. That's impermanence, right? Or somebody calls you and schedules an appointment to meet up with you on Wednesday, and then they call you on Tuesday and say, hey, sorry, I can't come. Something changed. That's impermanence. There's all this impermanence around you. So you're going to need to soak that in. If you're washing your clothes, if you're ironing your clothes and you see a rip or a tear in your clothes, that's impermanence. You see a pimple or a mole, that's impermanence. You get a little bit extra fat here and there, that's impermanence, right? You can still make wise decisions to stay healthy and to keep weight off and fix your clothes and these kinds of things, but you're going to need to soak into the mind to be able to see very clearly impermanence. Then the next one here is you can wear simple clothing. This is one of the ways to ensure that the mind isn't projecting a certain self-image in the world. So the monks, they wear those robes, right? And other people like me, we just wear all white in order to take the mind out of deciding what clothes you wear. And you can choose to do this kind of thing. Like you can get just one particular type of clothing and just wear that same thing all the time. But sometimes people aren't interested in going out and buying a bunch of new clothes. So you can actually accomplish the same thing that the monks are doing by wearing a robe, or like someone like me just wearing all white, by taking clothes that you have and just creating stacks where you have like a stack of pants, a stack of shirts or shorts or whatever, and you take the mind's ability out of trying to decide what you're going to wear. Because with personal existence view, you might go over to your clothes and you might think, who am I going to see today? Where am I going to go? How am I interested in being perceived? And I would like to wear this shirt. I would like to look like this. And now the mind gets those pleasant feelings because you're going out in the world being perceived in the way that you want to be perceived. The mind is grabbing onto this clothing thinking that this is you. But if you can just have a stack of clothes and you can just pick off the top, or if you hang up your clothes, you can just have a sequence that you just pick from the front. Now your mind doesn't get to choose what you're going to wear. Now, of course, you might go to immigration at some point, or you might go to a job interview. You're going to need to look a certain way because those people might be judging you, right? But 98% of the time, you can just pick off the top of this stack, and now you can go out into the world with whatever is on the top of your stack, not allowing your mind the opportunity to choose how you're going to look today. This will help you to erode this personal existence view. Things like jewelry and makeup and scents and things like this, you can actually choose to purge these out of your life as well. Right now, if you wear certain jewelry or certain makeup or things like this, you might need to gradually start letting those things go. Even if you wear a wedding ring, maybe you talk to your partner first, because if they see you taking off your wedding ring, they might be a little bit suspicious of what's going on, letting them know about personal existence view, what you're doing. But if you learn how to be peaceful and joyful when you go out into the world with your jewelry and without your jewelry, then you can experience more and more liberation of mind, more and more freedom. But if you've ever worn certain things for an extended period of time, you probably know that when you don't wear those things, you go out in the world and you might almost feel naked. You might feel kind of lost, not having that watch or that bracelet or that necklace or the earrings or some other item of jewelry or clothing or something like this. And what you're trying to do is train the mind to be peaceful and joyful no matter what. If you have this bracelet on, you can feel peaceful and joyful. If you don't have it on, you can feel peaceful and joyful. So you'd like to introduce some impermanence into your life where you kind of change things up, where you don't always go out with these same things all the time. So maybe you go out one day with your watch, one day without it, one day with it, one day without it. Maybe you go 2 days or 3 days without it, one day with it, 2 or 3 days without it, one day with it. And this is the way to gradually train your mind to let go of these articles of clothing and makeup and jewelry and things like this that the mind might be clinging to, thinking that this is who you are. And you can only feel comfortable if you go out into the world looking that way. So you would like to strip these things away and train the mind to let this go. And then some people choose to eliminate facial hair and head hair. This is the reason why the Buddha shaved his head, and this is why we continue to shave our hair today. Not everybody that gets to enlightenment has to shave their hair, but it's one thing that you can do in order to train the mind to let go. Now, oftentimes shaving the head hair is a lot more challenging for a woman, where shaving the facial hair is a lot more challenging oftentimes for a male. And if just the thought of even shaving off your facial hair or your head hair is like, oh my gosh, I would never do that, I could never go out into the world looking like that, that's actually a good reason to actually do it. So if you feel like you would really struggle with shaving off some of these things, it would be wise for you at some point to build up your practice to the point where you're able to do that potentially. And again, you're not required to do that. Nobody's going to try to convince you to do that. Nobody's going to ask you to do that. But at some point, if you would like to do that, that's one of the ways to really accelerate your ability to eliminate personal existence view. But I do know people who get to enlightenment without shaving their hair as well. So it's not required, but it's definitely something that will really accelerate you getting rid of personal existence view. Then, since these are proactive things, one of the things that you're going to need to do is where I say here, cut off and let go of a rising interest to project self-image and self-identity. This comes back to the Eightfold Path. For those of you guys that have studied the Eightfold Path with me, and I know some of you guys are going to be here next week when I'm teaching this on Tuesday, I'm going to be teaching the Eightfold Path. There's a section of the Eightfold Path that is called the mental discipline section. This is where the Buddha teaches right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, helping you to understand how to train your mind. And what I teach there, which I'll go into a lot of detail on this on Tuesday, is what mindfulness is where you have awareness of mind. And specifically, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you understand that and have awareness of the bodily sensations associated with discontentedness that arises. Like before you get frustrated or angry, there's going to be some bodily sensations like tightening of the chest, maybe pain around the heart, maybe tightening in the throat or heat in the face or pressure in the skull. These are all things that typically will happen before you get angry or frustrated. These are the bodily sensations. You're going to need to more and more get awareness of those so that you can cut off and let go of any discontentedness that is arising as a bodily sensation. Because if you miss it there, it's going to become a feeling. Now the mind's angry, and now you got to deal with this anger in the mind. And then it's going to affect the condition of the mind. Then it's going to form this mental object. And you use mindfulness to be aware of this, and then you use right effort to be able to actively cut it off and let it go. So if you haven't learned that yet, it's okay, but this is what I'll go into in a lot of detail on Tuesday. So this point here where you're cutting off and letting go of any arising interest to project this self-image or self-identity, this is what you're doing in the moment. So say you're waking up in the morning, you go over to your closet, you've got your stack of clothes there. You're like, yeah, David told me to do this stack of clothes and I'm going to pick off the top. But now you're like, I want to go to the bottom of that pile, or I want to go to the middle and pull out this thing. In that moment, your mind is arising some personal existence view. It's not content just picking off the top. It's trying to get this thing in the middle because the mind is still trying to make a choice. So in that moment, you need to be able to practice mindfulness where you're aware of the mind that is trying to do that and then cut that off and let it go. Or say that you're at your hair cutter, your barber or your beautician, and they're doing your hair and you're sitting there watching like every little cut that they're doing and kind of checking out what they're doing and really obsessively trying to figure out if they're cutting your hair in a proper way, the way that you want them to be cutting it. That's your personal existence view arising. Or any other time that you see this personal existence view related to your self-image or your self-identity arising, you need to be able to cut it off and let it go. Say you're at that restaurant and then 2 tables over, they're talking about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, and you're starting to notice this hostility, this frustration, this agitation arising. That's where you'd like to cut that off and let it go. You're restraining the mind, not allowing it to form its inner feelings based on what other people are choosing to do, because you can't control those people. Your job isn't to point out to those people, hey, that's really rude to talk about people that way. right? That's not your job. Those people's ego isn't going to accept you telling them what to do. And that's also not going to fix your problem. Telling that person to stop talking about your nationality, your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation. Your job isn't to go out into the world and teach other people how to do things. Your job is to train your own mind to be unaffected by what other people choose to do. Those unwise decisions of those people who think that way and talk that way, it's affecting them. But don't let what they say affect you. So where you hear those things and you start noticing that your discontentedness is arising due to personal existence view, you'd like to cut that off and let it go, restraining the mind. And as you cut this back more and more, eventually you'll get to the point where the discontentedness doesn't arise. It's kind of like a wild bush. These fetters will grow and grow and grow in the mind like a wild bush, but you need to cut them back and cut them back and cut them back and cut them back and eventually uproot them. So while we have these proactive things that I'm sharing with you, and one of those proactive things are seeking guidance with the teacher over multiple sessions, because you need to learn personal existence view, what it is and how to actively eliminate it. So even though we have these proactive things that you're doing that will help you to reduce your personal existence view, your personal existence view is going to need to be triggered several times for you to be able to see, oh yeah, there's the embarrassment. Oh yeah, there's the frustration. Oh yeah, there's the pleasant feelings when somebody compliments me and I see those pleasant feelings coming into the mind. You're going to need to see this, and it's going to need to be triggered for you to then cut it off and let it go. And as you cut it off and you trim it back, more and more you can uproot this personal existence out of the mind. And you'll know that you've been liberated from personal existence view, because in situations where you used to get angry and frustrated and irritated when people would say things about your self-image or your self-identity, you won't experience that anymore. When somebody compliments you and says how beautiful or handsome you are, you might smile, you might, why them or say thank you. That's very kind of you. But inside your mind, you'll remain calm and steady. And then also when somebody says something degrading and disparaging about this personal or this self-image or this self-identity, your personal existence view won't be there once you've eliminated it, and you'll reside peaceful and joyful. So you'll be at that same restaurant perhaps, overhearing somebody talk about your nationality or your culture, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, and you'll just smile because you'll know that, hey, I'm not affected by that person. That person is saying something that in the past would have triggered your personal existence view, and you would have got irritated or angry or frustrated. And now you can see you can reside peaceful and joyful in that situation. You still might not choose to associate with that person. You still might not choose to be, buddy with them and sit down and have dinner with them potentially, but you aren't going to be affected by what's going on in terms of what they're saying, that your mind is going to be able to reside peaceful and joyful regardless of what other people are choosing to say or what they're doing. And this is where you'll know that your mind's liberated. So these proactive things will need to be employed at different times, but then in the moment, you're going to need to be able to notice that arising discontent feeling and then cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. So do you guys have any questions on personal existence view in terms of how to eliminate it using these tools and techniques? Remember, you can use the mics here. And those of you guys online, you can put your question into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I will be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. So yes, what's your question? I don't think so. I don't think that one's working either. Did you guys turn it on? Is the light on? It's on now, yep.
Oh.
Here you go. It's working.
Yeah, sorry. I scared you. So, about ego serve no purpose. So no purpose means in vain, or so if you have a ego, so it's doesn't really mean good result. That meaning, or
can you repeat that again? I didn't understand.
Yes. So my question is the meaning of ego serve no purpose.
So no purpose means so no good result or in vain.
I see.
Right?
So you're asking me, what is ego serves no purpose?
Yes,
what does
yes.
that mean, right?
Yeah.
So there's no wholesome purpose to this ego. It doesn't produce anything beneficial. It doesn't produce anything wholesome in your life. So it serves no purpose to be able to help you in life and provide benefit. So you would be wise to eliminate it and get it out of the mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just because the title reminds me there are a lot of or many people or almost people have some ego, and then if the ego is too strong, it's very harmful to others. So, for example, those people who dictate or so like to control the people, other people, and then sometimes the ego kill people. And so that's one of the example. So yeah, I don't want to judge those people. So in a history or actually even now it happens in the world. But so the ego serves no purpose. Describe those kind of strong ego kill my mind or something like that.
Yeah, so as long as this ego is in there, it's going to cause constant complications. In fact, the ego, in my opinion, is one of the most detrimental things in the mind, because the ego is actually going to hinder a person from actually getting the help they need in order to dissolve the ego. Because the ego is in there being arrogant and boastful and thinking you're so great. And now the person doesn't realize that that is causing them all kinds of complications. And then because of the ego, they're not going to come to the temple and learn. They're not going to be willing to sit in a class and ask teacher questions and be humble and be willing to improve, because the ego is in there making you think that you're so great. The way that I think of the ego is I think about it like a bad tenant. If you've ever been a landlord, if you've ever rented a living space, that if you've ever had a tenant who doesn't pay rent, and then every time you show up to say, hey, you need to pay your rent, you didn't pay last month, and they're like, I'll get to it, I've had this trouble, I had that trouble, give me like one more week. And then you give them a week, and then you come back and they're like, oh, sorry, I had this problem, give me 3 more days. So the bad tenant is going to just try to figure out any way that it can to stay around and keep in this dwelling, because it really doesn't want to leave. The ego is the same way, that it's not providing any benefit whatsoever. It's not providing you anything beneficial, but it's going to try to figure out a way to stay around. As you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment and you start seeing these improved qualities of mind, your ego is going to be in there telling you like, look how enlightened you are. Look how great you are. You don't need to meditate anymore. You're already enlightened, because the ego wants to stick around. So if the ego can convince you that you're more enlightened than you really are, then it can stick around for longer. And it's the same thing like a bad tenant. And if it can convince you that the money's coming at some point, you might decide to keep this tenant around. So you need to get to the point where you can see this ego and be like, no, you're getting out of here. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, when she handed it to you, it should have been already on. There you go. It's on. Yeah, it's working.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. I totally understand the ego side of things, and I think it's excellent. But for me, in your everyday life, do we not form relationships and identify with people that have similar interests than us, and similar interests and similar ways of life? So that's probably what I'm struggling with the ego side, because I think I'm trying to separate that from, can we just basically get on with everybody, or do we live in a world where, it is sometimes the way we look, you wear the same clothes, I love football, or so identify with people that may support the same team as me. That's probably where I'm slightly confused with this.
Yeah. So you'll still make decisions in the world based on what you would prefer to do in the world. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you can hang out with anybody and everybody. You're not like, you're not looking down at some people and looking up to other people like, oh, these people got money, so I want to hang out with them, or oh, these people aren't educated, so I'm not going to hang out with them, or something like that. That's what the mind is doing when it has the ego. It's judging and measuring and comparing, and it can only feel comfortable if these particular conditions are met. But by the time you eliminate all that conditioning of the mind, you can reside harmoniously with all people, no matter what their background, no matter what they're into, no matter what they're doing. You can reside harmoniously with them, and you'll still have certain interests and certain things that you enjoy doing, and you can hang out with people that are doing those kinds of things. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to hang out with other people who are into other things. And maybe you even like that because people have different thoughts and experiences and activities, and it helps you to learn about those kinds of things. So the ego, it's going to want to judge people, and then you make decisions like, oh, I can only be with these types of people. But when you get rid of that, then you can reside harmoniously with everybody, because you're not judging people based on those types of criteria. You're just residing harmoniously with others, loving them as they are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. One thing that people ask about is like going into like a career or work environment, like say you're applying for a job, because usually when you go apply for a job, you need to have a certain CV or a certain resume and talk about your qualifications. And then when you go into the interview, you need to be able to communicate in a confident way about what you've accomplished and what you've done. So this is going to take some real work on your part, where you can go into an interview and you can present yourself in a humble way, but still be confident and explain what it is that you've accomplished in the world without being arrogant and boastful and prideful. And this is a real skill that you're going to need to develop. But as you develop it and you get more and more comfortable with it, you'll actually be more successful. Because if you go into a job interview being boastful and arrogant and prideful, those people will sometimes look at you in a very negative light because of their judgment, right? They're judging you. But what you would like to get to is a point where you can talk about your qualifications and credentials without being boastful and arrogant. And then this way people will see, wow, this person's accomplished so much, but yet they're so humble. This is really admired in the world when you see somebody who's humble. And that's what ultimately you're going to learn about here in a moment when we start talking about conceit, where this is more about personal existence view. I'm going to be teaching you how to dissolve the conceit aspect of the fetters so that you can reside humble and you can go into environments and get along with people very well, or get on with people very well. What is that? Is that British or? Yeah. Yeah. My son taught me the word nick. Nick, do you guys use that? Yeah. Yeah, he said, Dad, you just nicked that from me. And I was like, huh? Because he goes to school with British people. Yeah. So I learned a new word this week. Yeah. Thank you, guys. All right. Some other questions?
So, I'm kind of just contemplating, but yesterday, some of you were not here, but we talked about the sort of reincarnation and the 5 realms of existence. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering the ego's relationship to rebirth and reincarnation. Mm-hmm. I imagine that at some point there was a purpose with ego. I mean, it's there for some reason in the existence of the human realm, right?
It's in there for the animal realm, but in the human realm, it serves no purpose. It doesn't benefit you whatsoever.
So why have God let it still exist in the human realm then?
It's not that God's making it exist in the human realm. It's our own individual decisions of what's going on in our mind. God's not controlling the world. That's not what God does.
Oh, really?
A lot of people think that's what he does, but he doesn't. That's not his job.
But isn't God the creator of everything?
So the Buddha didn't teach that God's the creator of everything, but if you ask me, I would say, yes, God does create what's here, but he didn't create you, and he didn't create that craving in your mind. That's your mind choosing to hold on to that.
Didn't he create the origination of the craving?
Nope.
No.
Nope. So when you were a child and you craved ice cream or chocolate, God didn't create that. Battery's dying out. Some impermanence, yeah.
the origination of the origination. He created the impermanence, right?
So the Buddha never taught that God created these natural laws, but when I describe God, which we'll get to in chapter 18, which is 2 more chapters from now, 2 more weeks from now. In my opinion, God is the creator of these natural laws, but God isn't creating conceit in your mind. Your mind is choosing to hold on to that. And just like your mind is choosing to hold on to it, your mind can choose to eliminate it. And that's how you can see that it's not God that's causing that. It's you're experiencing the results of your decisions, not God's decisions. God's not choosing certain things for you. It's your results, your karma. It's there.
Yeah. No, I just feel like there's some kind of trick that God plays with us.
No, that's not true.
Forget.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point we have forgotten that. Yeah, it's just a mind trick.
So this is part of wrong view and part of that unknowing of true reality that oftentimes, you know how I talk about how the unenlightened mind will blame others for what it's experiencing? This is one of the things that the unenlightened mind will do is sometimes blame God. That's another being for what I'm experiencing. So you need to get away from that where it's Bob's fault, Barbara's fault that I'm experiencing this, or it's God's fault that I'm experiencing this. As long as an individual blames somebody else, then you have no control to fix it. You're rendering yourself.
I'm not the creator of everything.
You're rendering yourself powerless. But if you can embrace and understand that your mind is causing all of these discontent feelings, that anything you experience as a result of your decisions, now you can be empowered to create improvement in your life. But as long as you blame others, then you're powerless. You can't solve anything.
Yeah. There's a long discussion. We can take it another time.
Yeah. No, it's something for you to think about. It's something for you to reflect on, because as long as you blame God or think that God is causing you to experience something, then you can't solve it.
It's not what I'm thinking. It's the origination of the impermanence. That's what I'm contemplating.
Well, just because I would say that God created the natural laws of existence doesn't mean that he created conceit in your mind.
No, but the forgettance of God that I haven't realized up until recently, right?
The what of God?
The forgettance of the oneness of everything.
Did you say forgetness?
Yeah, the forgettance of oneness.
Forgetness. What is forgetness?
Forgettance. Is that not a word? English word? Maybe.
I haven't heard that.
That's that we have, I don't know, forgotten, or some that, or something's hiding that we are. We think that we are the self or this person, right?
So we'll talk about God in 2 weeks. We're going to go
into misunderstanding. There's a
there's a lot of misunderstanding around this being of God, and it's in chapter 18. So we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. I have a feeling you'll be here. Yeah. So let's talk about it then. And we'll dive into it in detail. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions you guys have?
Oh yeah, I have a doubt about the ego serve no purpose. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like I work out like in the gym and very hard, and then one day I got like I just in the mirror. Oh, this is what I want, and then sometimes like I feel down, and I just put out my favorite dress, my accessories. This did make me feel great. Like I was like, you know. Also, like if you for your just like I did great in front of my family. Like you give the image to people, but also you did effort to do it, and then that sometimes make you feel good. This feeling feel good is no purpose. I think it is because we live in the moment. We just these small moments, something like image or whatever makes you feel happy. So I think it is purpose.
Okay, so let me explain to you what you're sharing. Is you're talking about a conditioned feeling that when I see this muscle, I get happy, I get excited, I get these pleasant feelings. That's what you're trying to eliminate in the path to enlightenment, is eliminating conditioned feelings, that the mind can only be happy if I see this muscle grow. But now that muscle is not permanent. So whatever pleasant feelings that you acquired because of that muscle when that muscle's gone, you're going to feel sad. You're going to feel frustrated. So as long as you allow the mind to continue to experience conditioned pleasant feelings, then you're going to experience painful feelings as well. This is something that you learn as part of the Four Noble Truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha, is that, for example, if you look outside and you see it's sunny outside and you get happy, well, the sun is not permanent. So now when it rains, you're going to be sad. Or if you get happy because your bank account is this balance, when your bank account goes down, you're going to be sad. So what you're describing is just another aspect of conditional feelings, that I see this muscle, I created this muscle because of my ego, I want to look a certain way. And now if that muscle's there, I'll get happy. But then when it's gone, you're going to feel sad and frustrated.
But nothing is permanent, right? Yes. But we live by moments. These moments I'm happy because of the muscle, but this moment I'm happy because I'm very distressed. This moment I'm just happy because of the sunshine. So we live by moments, not like, nothing is permanent. So this moment I'm happy because of this. The next moment I'm happy because of that. So we live by moments.
The Buddha didn't teach that nothing is permanent. He taught that conditioned objects are not permanent. So conditional objects are not permanent. But by the time you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. So rather than have conditional happiness, where I can only be happy if my muscle looks like this, and my bank account looks like this, and the weather is like this, then I'll be happy. That's conditional happiness, and it's temporary. So ultimately, it's displeasing because the mind ends up in the painful feelings. But what you can get to is unconditional happiness, where if the muscle's there, you were already happy before you saw the muscle. But then when the muscle's gone, you can still be happy. If your bank account balance is this or it's this, you can still maintain your joy and your happiness. If the weather is this or that, you can still maintain your joy. So as long as you keep allowing the mind to experience conditional pleasant feelings, you're going to end up in the painful feelings. And you may not be able to see that right now because I can tell you haven't learned the Four Noble Truths in detail in the way that I would teach them in order to help you be able to see this problem of discontentedness and the cause of that problem. But what you're describing is the actual problem that the Buddha discovered that you can eliminate, so that way you can get to the enlightened mind, where the mind is always peaceful and always joyful. It's a permanent mental state. What you're describing, the mind's going to go up and down and up and down. And that's not what you're interested in if you're interested in getting to enlightenment.
Most of the time, for myself, I'm very peaceful, like happy. But there are moments like you feel down because we're human. We're human. We always get something like we waves a little bit our emotions. It's very hard to avoid that. So you say to reach that moment, like be happy unconditionally. For most of us, I don't know how to. It's very hard for us to reach that point.
And that's why you come to the temple, so you can learn how to get to that point.
We don't have a chance, like we live in the city, we have our things to do. We don't have really get the time to the temple and meditate or think, calm self down. It's just too hard for us.
That's because you lack the wisdom of how to do it. When you come to the temple, when you learn with the books, when you work with a teacher, when you dedicate time, effort, energy, and resources for your own growth and your development, you can get to the point where it's not hard anymore. But right now, with the lack of wisdom, sure, it's challenging for you. So if you're interested in getting to permanent peace and permanent joy, you can choose to do that or not. It's your decision. But if you would like to do that, I'm here to help you.
Permanent happiness, I don't. It's very hard to believe that.
You shouldn't believe it. You should believe nothing.
Nothing is permanent.
No, that's not true. Enlightenment is permanent. When you get to enlightenment, and the natural laws of existence are permanent, but these are what's called unconditioned objects. The Buddha taught conditional objects, and he taught unconditional objects. Conditional objects, they arise, they change, and they fade away. Unconditional objects, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. So this is one of the misunderstandings with the teachings of the Buddha. People think that he said nothing is permanent, but that's actually not what he said. I can show you his words where he says conditional objects are impermanent. So understanding the difference between a conditional object and unconditional objects. This is one of the very first things that I teach students when they first start learning with me. This is something that you would need to learn. And then you would need to learn what the problem is, because you don't understand the problem of discontentedness in the mind and then the cause of that problem. So if you're going to be around Chiang Mai, or if you can get online, I'm going to be teaching this on Tuesday. And if you can't do that, then there's videos and podcasts and things that I've created, books, where you can learn about what the problem is in the unenlightened mind and how to solve it. Because yes, as long as you lack wisdom, you will see it as hard. You will see it as difficult. And sometimes what the ego does is it's trying to convince you that, yeah, I'm human. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. Yeah, I've got all these busy things in my life. I'm just human. And it's kind of the human mind kind of accepts that, yeah, I'm going to sometimes be angry. I'm going to sometimes be sad. So if you accept that you're going to sometimes be angry and sad, then you'll just continue to be angry and sad for the rest of your life. But if you start to get to the point where you start to investigate the teachings of the Buddha and you start reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, you can see that the condition of the mind is gradually improving, and you can get to the point where you see more peace and more joy, and you'll eliminate your doubt and you'll eliminate your belief that these teachings could potentially help you. Because by the time you start seeing the peace and the joy come into the mind, you'll know with 100% certainty that these teachings are leading to an improved condition of mind. But it's going to take some effort on your part, some work. You're going to need to set aside certain things in your life that are maybe unbeneficial now, and decide that you would like to dedicate time and energy towards learning and practicing the teachings, so that you can see the truth that these teachings do and lead to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is permanent. So don't believe me that this is true, but learn and practice, and then you can see for yourself that the teachings of the Buddha lead exactly where he said they do, to this enlightened mental state.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Anything else you guys would like to ask? Okay, so let's look at the next one, which is conceit. I've actually got two things to share here, two different slides, because with conceit, it takes a lot more work to eliminate it. And even personal existence view, it takes a lot of time to understand what personal existence view is, and then start applying the techniques to eliminate it. So this is why I teach it, even in a foundational program like the group learning program and in the first book, because it'll take you multiple years to eliminate your ego. It takes a lot of time. So it's important to learn about it early in your development on the path to enlightenment, so you can gradually chip away at it, almost like a jackhammer chipping away at concrete. You would like to gradually chip this away. So this ego, this arrogance, this conceit, this boastfulness, putting oneself above or below others, the ways that you can proactively eliminate that is start integrating into your conversations, thank you, sorry, speaking polite, using things like sir and ma'am, saying, I don't know. In certain situations, some people have difficulty saying, I don't know. You need to get to the point where you're comfortable to just say, I don't know. I don't do that. Sometimes people ask me questions about visas and things like this. I don't know. I don't process visas. There's companies that do that. There's immigration. I can tell you what I do for my visa, but I can't tell you all the different visas in Thailand, right? So you need to get comfortable with saying, I don't know, and saying thank you and sorry. In the Thai language, remember, Thai language is structured in a way that connects with these teachings. There's words that they add in to ensure that they're being polite and kind. So like if you guys even speak a little bit of Thai, you probably know the word ka or kap at the end of each phrase. But there's even other words that make it even more polite and more loving and more endearing. Like we say kapom or nakap, or we refer to people as big brother, big sister. So the English language doesn't really have a lot of these things that the Thai language has, but we used to use words like sir and ma'am to refer to people. And nowadays there's some people who consider themselves non-binary. They don't consider themselves male or female. So in some cases, you may not be able to use these particular pronouns, but these are very helpful for people to be able to see that you're being polite and kind and friendly and respectful, and refer to people as sir and ma'am. So you can integrate some of that into your conversations, and it'll be really helpful for you to eliminate your ego, but then also for you to develop harmonious relationships with others. So thank you, sorry, sir, ma'am, I don't know. These are all great ways to help you eliminate the conceit. One of the very best things you could ever do to help you eliminate the ego and you can actually do this really easily, is sleep in a low position. You can put your mattress straight on the floor, or if you're here in Thailand, pretty much all the beds are below the knee. If you go shopping here in Thailand for a bed, it's going to be low. Whereas if you go to a Western culture, at least the culture I came from, most of the beds are very high. And you see in the cultures that have really high beds, you'll see a lot of ego in those cultures. But the Buddha would sleep on the floor. He would sleep on the ground. And the reason why is going down onto the floor and getting up off the floor each day. And as you go to the bathroom and as you get in and out of bed, over time, this will gradually wear away the ego. It's not going to be one day or 1 week or 1 month, but this is a very simple thing that you can just set up your bed in one particular way. And now it's going to gradually help you to eliminate your conceit over a long-term period of time. This is one of the best things you can ever do to eliminate conceit out of the mind, is sleep on a low location and not have this luxurious place to sleep. You can even do this when you're reading books, or if you're watching TV, you can sit on the floor. This is really helpful for the mind to be able to eliminate the ego. If there's certain tasks that you feel are beneath you, you might decide to start doing these. This will really help you. So if you have a lot of difficulties washing dishes or cleaning toilets or scrubbing the floor or washing clothes or anything like this, if you ever see these things as being beneath you, then it's really wise to do these things and train the mind that it's okay, that you can do these things. So what we usually say is, like, before enlightenment, carry wood or chop wood and carry water. And then after enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. So it's not like, oh, I'm enlightened now, so I don't have to respect anybody. No, an enlightened being doesn't think that way. They're going to be humble. They're going to be down to earth. An enlightened being is going to have no problem washing dishes, cleaning a toilet, scrubbing a floor, all these kinds of things. So if you are hindered in potentially doing some of those types of things, be sure that you integrate those into your life. There's also listening to others teach you wisdom without any interest to teach them anything. This is one of the things that an individual can do. Like coming to the temple, sometimes an individual might come here and think that their job is to teach the teacher. Or you might go to a certain public setting where there's friends having a conversation and you hear somebody say something and you feel like you have to come over the top of them and show them how intelligent you are. This is the ego that's trying to do that. So if you can put yourself in settings where you can listen to people without having any interest to teach them anything, is just listen to what they have to say. Of course, ask questions potentially. This can be really helpful for your ego to be very humble and just listen to what other people's experiences are without any interest in trying to teach them something. Because that's what the ego will do, is when you hear somebody say something, you might want to come over the top of them and prove that you're right and they're wrong. So by just listening without any interest to teach them, this can help the ego be eliminated. You can also wash people's feet. This is something that they do in Thai culture at different times during the year. You will go to your parents or your siblings or your grandparents. They even do it with teachers. They have certain days in Thailand, which is called Wai Kru Day, where students will take their teacher flowers or food or things like this. You can do this for your parents. Like on your birthday, oftentimes in Western culture, we're taught that it's all about me. It's my birthday. I want to get gifts. I want everybody to know it's my birthday. In Thailand, they actually reverse this. When it's your birthday, you usually go to your parents, you usually give them gifts, usually take them out to dinner. You might do this with your friends. You might wash your parents' feet, thank them for the life that they've given you. So you actually turn it around in Thailand, where your birthday becomes a celebration of the people in your life that are contributing to your life. Because in order for you to become a better and better being, there needs to be people in your life that support you. So washing people's feet is a wonderful way to communicate love. We talked about love last week. So you can tell someone you love them with your speech, but your actions speak so much louder than your words. And when you're humbly washing somebody's feet, it really communicates a lot of love as you're caressing their foot and washing it and taking the care to do this. The first time you might do this with your parents or your caregivers, you might be kind of nervous. This is the mind's conceit, that it doesn't feel comfortable in that situation. So if you choose to do this, this can be really wonderful for your conceit, and it will improve your relationship too. When I did this with my grandmother and my mother, they were even shaken up by it because they had never experienced it before. So when you do this, it'll help you, and it'll even help your parents or your grandparents if you choose to do this. Thai people will usually do this at New Year's. They will do it on Mother's Day, Father's Day. They will do it on their birthday, or really any time during the year. You can really do this for your parents, your caregivers. Some people do it with teachers or brothers and sisters. When we used to do this in the family, we would have a whole line, right? Like the oldest members of the family would sit on the sofa. So it would be our grandfather, and then his wife would go, his children, his grandchildren, so forth and so on. Then he would get off the couch, and then grandma would get on the couch, and then we would go through a line and we would do them. And you say a couple words to them, you kind of why them, you humbly thank them for whatever they've contributed to their life. And then over the course of, several minutes or maybe an hour or two, everybody has kind of been cycled through, and we've all done this for each other. So you can make it part of your family events as you guys get together for Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthdays or Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or Father's Day. It's a really enjoyable thing. But when you first start doing it, just like everything else, the mind doesn't like impermanence. So as you start implementing change into your life, your mind might be shaken up a little bit and feel nervous as you're doing it. But each time you do it, the mind's going to become more and more peaceful and more settled. And that's helping you to get rid of your conceit. And as your conceit's coming out of the mind, that's when your mind will become more peaceful and more joyful doing these kinds of things. You can show respect and gratitude to people with a why. Thai people do this for a reason. This has been their greeting for a really long time. I don't know the origins of the why, but I suspect that when Thai people were living in different tribal communities and different kingdoms, they were actually speaking different languages. I don't know if you guys know this. There's a main language of Thai, but then there's different regional dialects as well, because they were different kingdoms at one time. And you would know if somebody was part of your kingdom or not because they could speak your language. And when you would interact with people from another kingdom, I suspect they would why each other from a distance to show each other, hey, we don't have any weapons. We don't mean you any harm. You can why people. And I'm starting to see this come into Western culture more and more. If you watch like celebrity award shows or things like this, people are starting to why each other more and more around the world. When I traveled back to America last year, and even when I went to Egypt for a period of time, I was whying people. I was in Egypt saying, Assalamu alaikum, whying to people, because this is their greeting in Egypt. And when I was in America, I was doing the same thing, and they were actually whying me back. And this is a way for you to bow your head and be more humble. And in some cases here in Thailand, if you're living in Thailand, you're going around constantly whying people if you're a part of Thai society. Even when I'm driving into my village, I'm on the motorbike, I don't have my hands available. I'll bow my head to the people at the security gate. We call them security guards, but I really think of them as greeters. They're just kind of greeting people as they come and go. They don't really need any security, but as they open the gate for me and they close the gate for me, so I bow to them as I go in and out. And when I first started doing this, I noticed that they really started to be more attentive to opening the gate. So when I show up at the village, sometimes they have the gate open before I even get there because they see me coming from far away and they will open it. And I didn't start whying them, of course, because I wanted them to do this. But this is just some of the effects that you'll see, that when you show up to the gate, they're smiling, they're happy, they're cheerful because they know that you're respecting them. So it helps you to eliminate your conceit, but then it also helps you to build relationships with other people. And you can even do this in the Western world, because I did it when I traveled to America and even to Egypt. I was whying people and bowing my head to people, and it seemed like they really enjoyed it because they were doing it back, and they were very cheerful when I was doing this with them. You can practice generosity, loving kindness, and compassion. These are qualities that I taught back in chapter 14, and also generosity we taught back in chapter 10. And I teach this at different times in different programs of what these qualities are and how to practice them. So as you're practicing generosity, loving kindness, and compassion, this is helping you to eliminate more and more of the conceit. Then you can eliminate judgment and comparing as being superior and inferior. As you're noticing that arising, you can cut that off and eliminate it. So wherever you see your mind doing that to other people or yourself, eliminate that. So if you're walking down the street and you see somebody coming at you, and all of a sudden you see your mind starting to judge others, be sure you work to eliminate that and get that out of the mind. Be kind and gentle to others, because it's the right thing to do, not because you want anything from them, but because it's the right thing to do. And you'll notice improvement in your relationships. You can ask other people advice and what they've learned in life without trying to prove anything to them. You can just sit down with people and just talk to people and ask them questions without you sharing anything about yourself, unless they ask you questions, of course. But sometimes when you're sitting down with somebody and they're sharing things about what they've done in their life, again, the ego might feel like it wants to come over the top and prove to them that you're better than they are. But don't allow the ego to do this. Just sit down, ask people questions, and just listen to what they've done in their life. This can be really good for the ego. Help others without any expectation of anything in return, any kind of favor, any positive benefit for yourself. This is part of generosity, where you're not interested in wanting something for yourself, but you're just choosing to be generous without any expectation of anything in return. Seek guidance from a teacher. This will help the mind to admit to itself that it doesn't know everything it needs to know in the world. So just by choosing to come here and learn with a teacher or seeking personal guidance from a teacher, it's helping your ego. And each time you choose to seek guidance from a teacher, it helps to wear away your ego a bit more and more. So there's plenty of people in the world that need help, but they're not willing to come learn from a teacher. There's too much ego in the mind to actually come and show up to a place where they need to learn. So just by coming and learning like this and asking a teacher questions, this is really wonderful for the ego. And then just like we talked about with personal existence view, you can cut off and let go of any kind of conceit as it's arising in the moment, that wherever you see the mind projecting arrogance or pride or judging or measuring and comparing, cut that off. So most of these things are all proactive things that you can be doing to reduce the ego or that conceit. But then in the moment, you need to be aware of the mind, that wherever you see the mind wanting to be boastful or arrogant or prideful or judging, you need to be able to have mindfulness, to be able to see that, have awareness of it, and then to take right effort and cut that off and let it go. And as you're pulling back and pulling back, almost like you're pulling the reins on a horse, more and more the mind will be disinterested in projecting that ego. So right now, there might be this certain amount of arrogance or boastfulness that the mind has, but if you keep pulling it back and pulling it back and pulling it back over a consistent long-term period of time, while implementing these proactive ways of dissolving the conceit, over time, you'll uproot this conceit out of the mind and it won't be there anymore. And you'll notice that you'll start being more harmonious with people in your personal and professional relationships. You'll see a lot of improvement in those. And you'll see an improvement to your own mind because you'll start having this inner dialogue that's more healthy. Because as I mentioned, if you have conceit where you're judging others, you're probably also judging yourself as well in a negative way. And you can eliminate that through eliminating the conceit of judging others. You won't judge yourself anymore either. So the last thing I'll share, and I'll let you guys ask any and all questions on this that you like, is actually there's two things for me to share. These are the words of the Buddha on some conceit, so that you can see how the Buddha taught to eliminate conceit. And then I have one more thing to share on this. So here, this is titled, "Gain, Honor, and Praise are an Obstacle even for an Arahant." Monks, gain, honor, and praise, I say, are an obstacle even for a monk who is an arahant, one with taints destroyed. So an arahant is an enlightened being. That's what that means. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda asked the master teacher Gautama, "Why, Venerable Sir, are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle, even for a monk with taints destroyed?" His close student Ananda is saying, hold on a second. If someone's already enlightened, why is gain, honor, and praise an obstacle for them? They're already an arahant. They're already enlightened. Wouldn't their mind already be peaceful and joyful? Why is gain, honor, and praise an obstacle for them? So the Buddha comes in and says, "I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind. But I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings in this very life, which are achieved by one who resides diligent, dedicated, and determined. So dreadful, Ananda, are gain, honor, and praise, so bitter, vile, obstructive to achieving the unsurpassed security from bondage, enlightenment. Therefore, Ananda, you should train yourselves thus. We will abandon the arisen gain, honor, and praise, and we will not let the arisen gain, honor, and praise persist, obsessing our mind. Thus should you train yourselves. So the Buddha is not saying that once your mind is enlightened, that gain, honor, and praise is an obstacle, because your mind's already enlightened. You're liberated. If you hear somebody praising you, your mind's not going to get all these conditioned pleasant feelings if your mind is liberated. What he's saying is that it's an obstacle to attain enlightenment, that you need to eliminate this gain, honor, and praise, where the mind's looking for this gain, honor, and praise in the world from other people. Sometimes you might feel like you need to be validated, that your feelings or your thoughts or things that you have certain opinions or views about, you might be seeking other people to validate those opinions and views. But you would like to eliminate that and just get to the point where you can see the truth more and more through practicing these teachings, eliminating conceit, that you can see the wisdom in the teachings that the Buddha is sharing with you, that you're not looking for other people to validate the things that you say or the things that you do or certain choices that you make in the world. You can eliminate that desire, that craving for other people to validate you through gain, honor, and praise, because that's an obstacle to your attainment of enlightenment. That's what the Buddha is sharing here. And then lastly, the thing that I'll share is that it's important to always and forever to never assume that ego has been extinguished, that always practice to be eliminating the ego. As soon as you think your ego is eliminated, that means it's still there. One of the things that students will sometimes come to me is they'll say, David, I would like to know whether I have ego or not. And I'll ask them, I'll say, do you have ego? And they'll say, no, I don't have ego. And I'll say, oh, you still have ego, right? So if you think that, no, you don't have ego anymore, you still have ego, because the ego is in there trying to convince you that you don't have ego. So as soon as the mind tries to convince itself that you don't have ego, this is when you'll slip up and you won't spot that arrogance, that little bit of conceit, that little bit of boastfulness, that little bit of this or that. You won't spot it. So if you stay diligent and dedicated to spotting the ego and eliminating it, then anytime it raises its head, you can cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. Because just like that bad tenant, the ego is going to try to figure out a way to stay in there. The ego is going to try to convince you that you know more than you really do. And it's not going to be interested to come to the temple or read a book or ask a teacher questions. That personal existence view is going to have you be shy, that you don't want to pick up the mic, you don't want to ask questions, you don't want to be seen or heard in a certain way. So you would like to get to the point where you set all this aside and you never assume that the ego has been eliminated, and just always stay diligent to actively eliminating it. Wherever you see it raise its head, it's kind of like that game Whack-A-Mole. If you've ever played that game where every time the mole pops its head up, you hit it and hit it and hit it. It's the same thing. Every time you see the conceit or the personal existence view rise up, you would like to restrain the mind and pull it back. And this is how you ultimately are able to stay determined and dedicated to eradicating this out of the mind. And you'll see more and more peace and more joy come into the mind, and you'll see that your personal and professional relationships will drastically improve. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any hostility in any of your relationships whatsoever. You will get along with everybody and anybody that you come in contact with. So let me know what questions you guys have on anything that I've shared here about conceit. I'll just kind of back up. So if you guys have any questions on any of these, you can let me know. Yes, ma'am.
About why wait. So you mentioned it. So when you so pass through the entrance, so you greeting to the person who at the anyway, at the entrance. So away, it means so just to say hello or to respect to someone.
Can you say that first part?
Sorry, why? I'm
why.
sorry, W-A-I.
Yes. So when you why somebody,
Why is English?
Yeah, well, we call it why.
Why?
In
like
Thai. This is whying somebody.
Okay.
I'm whying you, right? This is a way for me to say hello. Mm-hmm. It's a way for me to say goodbye. Okay. But it's also a way for me to show respect to you and show politeness. Yeah. And it's also a way for this mind to humble itself. Yeah. Because when you're bowing your head like this, it's a way to humble yourself. So that's going to help you since you live in Thailand. by you going around whying the food servers, the owners at the restaurant, the taxi drivers, the different people you see, by you whying people that you come in contact with, this is going to help you because 20, 30, 40 times a day, you're whying people.
Yeah.
This will help you gradually wear away your conceit.
Yeah, I think it's
among
really,
all these other things.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Easy, and then so I can do. So that why it's kind of a. Do you think it's a common all over the world, or so? For example, if you go to the Islam world, so it's okay. Salam alaikum. It's why like this.
Yeah, when I traveled, I knew that this is not common in America and it's not common in Egypt. But I knew that if I did it, people would understand. So I made I didn't change when I went to America, right? Like if you're practicing these good, wholesome teachings, you know that they're good, wholesome teachings, and you know that this is what led to your peace and your joy. And you're not going to just stop doing that because you move to a different land and you go to a different culture. So when I was in America, when I would show up to a hotel, I would say, "Hi, how are you?" I was speaking English, right? "Hello, how are you? I'm David. I'm here to check in." And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, David, we were expecting you. You're in room 617 or whatever it is." And I'm like, "Oh, great. Thank you so much." So then when I would come in and out of the hotel, I would why them. And I would even bring them chocolate sometimes. I would go out to the store. I would bring them little gifts at the hotel and things like this. So you can form these really wonderful relationships with people that you're around. And it also helps you to eliminate your conceit. So I would do this with taxi drivers, hotels, people at stores that I was buying things, things like this. Whether I was in America, whether I was in Egypt, whether I was in Thailand, I was functioning in the same way. This is one of the ways that your mind gets to this peace and joy, because when you have conceit, you're going to function in one way with these group of people, and you're going to function in another way with this group of people. And the mind has to constantly figure this out, and it's a real burden to the mind to try to do that. But by the time you get to this enlightened mental state, you can function the same way with everybody, where your mind is at ease and you're just so comfortable no matter where you are in the world.
Okay. Thank you. So this activity with the both hand is actually it's even though there are different religious people, it's okay to do like this.
Yeah, because this isn't a religious thing. It's just a gesture, just like some cultures do a handshake. Some people kiss on each side of the cheek, right? This is a gesture that is starting to become universally understood as respect and politeness and gratitude. This is also gratitude, right? Saying thank you to somebody. So it's starting to be universally understood. That's why I mentioned that I see it on like celebrity award shows and things like this. I'm seeing more and more people in the world starting to do this because it's becoming universally understood as politeness, respect, gratitude, and those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
Good to know. Thank you.
You were saying earlier, like to pursue unconditional happiness, we should learn, like, come to temple to learn, get the wisdom to do that. So I have a question. Do you feel you get that level? Like you always feel peaceful, feel happy, and do you have like a wave emotion? And how long you have been practice days to reach that point?
Sure. So I no longer experience any anger, frustration, sadness, all of those discontent feelings that I talk about. I haven't experienced those for a very long time. I was at a retreat in America last year. That's why I went there to teach. And the students asked me, David, when's the last time you experienced anger? And I said, it's been so long, I don't know. And they said, well, what would your son say? And my son was with me, so he had just walked into the room, and I said, I don't know, you can ask him. There he is right there. So in front of all the students, they asked my son, when's the last time you saw your dad angry? And he said, essentially in 2017 is the last time that he saw me angry. So that's the last time that I remember. Also, once he mentioned it, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, because there was a period of time, he was 9 years old at that time. So he said, Dad, when you owned your Mercedes, that's when I saw you angry last. Because back then I had a Mercedes, I had a truck, I had 5 or 6 motorcycles, I had a second house with a pool and bodyguards, and I was working in business. I had all this money, but I also had a lot of craving at that time. So I needed to learn and train and practice and develop to get to the point where I could train my mind. An enlightened being isn't going to say that they're enlightened. So by me answering your question, I'm not telling you that I'm enlightened, but I'm not saying that I'm not enlightened either, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you have eliminated your personal existence view, you've eliminated your conceit. So one of the ways to know that somebody's not enlightened is they will tell you that they are enlightened. So as soon as somebody tells you they're enlightened, you know that they're not. But if somebody asks this kind of question about when's the last time you were angry, or do you ever experience any frustration or anger or irritation? I can answer those kinds of questions. And then some people on their own might make the inference that, okay, if he no longer experiences anger and frustration, then maybe he's enlightened. But that's not something that I'm saying. And I would like to just be clear about that. So I started learning and practicing these teachings. You could take it all the way back to probably 2002 is when I first started getting introduced to any kind of Buddhist type things. But also I kind of think about it as even when I was a child, right? My grandmother was teaching me things like, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. That's kind of part of right speech, which is part of the path to enlightenment, because these are the natural laws of existence. And these natural laws, different people have tapped into them at different times, and people describe them in different ways. And then as I started observing past lives and I started noticing my past lives, I could see in previous lives that I was also learning and practicing these teachings as well. So the amount of time that an individual takes to be able to get to enlightenment is different for each individual, because when you come to the path, different people have different amounts of pollution in their mind. And then based on the dedication and the determination and the amount of effort and energy you put into learning and practicing is going to determine how long it takes any one particular person. So while I can say that I haven't experienced anger since 2017, and you could back this up to, practicing as early as 2002 or even in previous lives or when I was a child, each individual person can get to this enlightened mental state. There's no reason why you can't get to enlightenment in this life. If you study the original teachings of the Buddha with guidance from a teacher, there's no reason why you can't accomplish that in this life. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in eliminating these discontent feelings to learn and practice and set aside time to be able to do that. And gradually, slowly but surely, you can experience this enlightened mental state where the mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings, and you can just be peaceful and joyful all the time. You won't even ever be in a bad mood anymore. You'll never even experience a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment.
But emotion waves is not only about bad negatives feelings. You also have peached ones, like very excited, very happy. I really love this person. I feel this feeling this is too the high pitch. So you don't feel anger for a very, very long time. Do you feel very, I would say, you just love that feeling oh, I love her. I love this. So you have that high pitch, not all the same. Because why do we pursue that feeling so peaceful? It's okay to heartbroken. I love this person. We broke up and I feel hurt. But it's okay. We have to experience this. Why we pursue very peaceful?
The painful feelings that you experience when a relationship breaks up is not from the love. This is something we talked about last week, where oftentimes people think it's love that's causing those painful feelings. It's actually craving, desire, attachment. It's the mind longing and yearning, wanting this relationship to be permanent. And then when you're together, you experience the pleasant feelings. But when you guys are separated and you're apart, now this impermanence that the mind doesn't understand, it's craving permanence in this relationship to be permanent. So now you experience painful feelings. And oftentimes people associate that as being love, but it's not the love that's causing that. It's the craving, desire, attachment. So I don't experience those high highs and the low lows. I experience joy and happiness and all those different experiences, but those are mental qualities, where in the unenlightened state, you experience them as a conditioned feeling, that the mind can be happy if this condition is met, or this condition is this condition, then you will be happy. For an individual who's trained their mind to the point that I'm describing as enlightenment, they can experience happiness and joy all the time. No matter what's going on in their life, they're always comfortable, always peaceful, always joyful. But when oftentimes I talk about eliminating conditioned feelings, people think that an enlightened being must be like a robot, must be mute, must be like emotionless, but this isn't actually true. An enlightened being has unconditioned mental qualities that are just always there because the mind has been purified with no longer having pollutions in the mind. The mind can reside in that brightness, and the radiance of the enlightened mind can shine through. But when your mind's polluted with these fetters and others, then your mind will be hindered and you will experience the anger and the frustration, but you'll also experience those conditioned pleasant feelings. You need to be able to see that part of the problem is the conditioned pleasant feelings, that the mind can only be happy when these conditions are met. And when you see that as part of the problem, that ultimately those conditioned feelings are undesirable because your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings at some point. If you allow your mind to get happy because you have a boyfriend and excited because you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, then when you don't have that anymore, you're going to experience painful feelings. If you allow your mind to get happy and excited because somebody complimented you and said you look beautiful, then when somebody says something degrading or disparaging, you're going to get angry or frustrated. If you allow your mind to get pleasant feelings because you got a new car or you got new money or a new job, then when you don't have those things anymore, you're going to experience painful feelings. So you can get to the point where your mind is just always joyful. If you're employed, you're joyful, but you're not joyful because you're employed. You're already joyful before you were employed. But now when the company goes out of business and you can't work at that job anymore, you can still maintain your joy because you don't form your happiness based on the condition of this job. So therefore, when the job is gone, you're not going to end up in the painful feelings. You'll still be able to maintain your joy.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. If you're going to be around this week in Chiang Mai, or if you can get online.
Yeah, I'm going to stay for a while.
Yeah, I would encourage you to come for this course that I'm teaching starting tomorrow, because on Tuesday, I'll be teaching you in detail content that you need to understand in order to be able to see the bigger picture and also the detail of what's really causing these discontent feelings and how to get liberated from them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, we have another question? Go ahead.
I'm just curious if you have any practices or tools to help let it go. Like, I feel like in theory, that sounds really easy and simple. So like, other than like being present and being with the breath, of like letting go of the physical sensations that come up before you feel a feeling. Yeah, if you just have any more like practical stuff to do.
Sure. Are you planning to come this week for the course? Okay. I'm going to be going through a lot of details in the course that you're going to learn, because there's many different tools and techniques that you need to put together, but I'll just say what they are now. But then in terms of teaching you how to do it, I will teach you next week, since you're coming next week. So breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go, because every time it moves off the breath, you're cutting it off and letting it go and coming back to the breath. Generosity, when you're practicing giving and sharing, that's helping your mind to let go. I'm going to go into more detail on both of these next week. Then also, when you're practicing the Eightfold Path in the moment where your mind is experiencing discontentedness, in that moment, if you've been doing the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, you can cut off and let go. And one of the things that you might need to do is redirect the mind. So say you're at home, you're watching the news, and you're starting to notice this frustration because you're seeing about this murder or this rape or something in a political environment, and you're starting to get angry. Rather than just sit there and dwell in those angry thoughts and those frustrated thoughts, you would like to turn off the news, get up and go for a walk, go for a bike ride, redirect the mind to something else. If you just sit there and watch the news, you're just going to get more and more angry. You're allowing the mind to have that conditioned feeling. And the reason why you're getting angry is because of your own mind's craving, desire, attachment. So when you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation, generosity, and you're redirecting the mind and restraining it in the moment like this is going to help you to ultimately be able to let go, right? Because as you gradually wear away the mind's craving, you'll be able to more easily let go. And it takes time to develop that. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So what I'll do then is just thank you guys for coming for today's class and invite you guys to future classes. Each Sunday and Wednesday, I teach this group learning program at 9 a.m. in the morning from here at the temple, and 9 p.m. I do it from home, but I live stream it from home so people can watch no matter where you are in the world. There should be a time zone that you're in where you can attend the live class. And they're also recorded, so you can watch them even on Monday or Tuesday or other times if you can't make the live class. And then on Saturdays, we have our Pali Canon and English study group that students oftentimes move into. And then we have various courses and retreats throughout the month and throughout the year. Tomorrow, we have a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course that's starting. The first week of every month, I teach this foundational program, and I teach it here at the temple, and then people can join by online too. This particular one, I'm going to have Zoom as well as Facebook and YouTube on, and it's going to eventually make it to the podcast. But typically what I do is I just open up Zoom when I'm teaching classes here. But this particular one, since it's the beginning of the year, I'm going to also live stream it as well. So you have all these classes, courses, and retreats available to you. You have books that you can download for free. You can take them and go print them. I've even done audiobooks about these books so that you can get those for free online. These printed books, we just ask that you reimburse us for the printing costs. So if you like the printed ones, you can get them here at the temple. Or for those of you guys online, you can purchase them on Amazon. So all these resources are available for you, even personal guidance. If you would like to sit down and talk to me privately, you can schedule an appointment online and we'll meet in Zoom. Or if you're here in Chiang Mai, you can schedule an appointment, just sit down and talk with me, or come by the temple and say, hey, can I talk with you? And we'll sit down and chat, because I'm very interested in seeing you get to enlightenment, and I'm motivated to help you, but you're the one that needs to do that work, and you need to decide that, yes, I would like this help. So all this help is available to you at no cost, because I'm very confident that if you learn and you practice these teachings, you will experience the results. Sorry, I have to watch my saliva here, having difficulties with my saliva. But as you guys are learning and practicing, I'm motivated to help you. So feel free to let me know what questions you guys have, and I'll be able to help you. As you would like to come to class, you can just show up. You can register online. It's up to you. You can join online. So thank you all for coming, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. I appreciate that you guys have decided today's a day that you would like to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. So perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.